Hey, what's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today we're going to be doing our first version of the 2020 mock draft. But before we get started, I just wanted to mention that you can follow me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY. So I use the Draft Network's mock draft tool. So essentially, it's like I was picking as the New York Jets. It's not like, oh, I think this guy's going to be available at 11, so let's take him. No, it was literally like the computer drafting for the other teams. I picked for the New York Jets. So keep that in mind with my selections because number 11 overall, usually I would like to go offensive lineman, but the top three O linemen in Thomas, Wirfs, and Willis were already off the board. So keep that in mind. Let's get right into it and let's talk about it. So with the 11th overall pick, I went with CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver out of Oklahoma. Had over 1,300 yards, 14 touchdowns. He was a huge piece to this Oklahoma offense over the last couple of years. And obviously, he is a first round talent. I think the best wide receiver in the draft, some will say Jeudy, but I prefer CeeDee Lamb. He has all the tools that would make you think he's a number one receiver. Now, do you bring Robbie Anderson back? That is huge, and this definitely goes into this decision. And obviously, I get the idea that the offensive line's a much bigger need than the wide receiver position, but if the top three offensive tackles are on the board, you can't reach for a player there. You're probably better off going with a talent like CeeDee Lamb. Make life easy for Sam Darnold. And by doing that, you draft Lamb, you bring back Robbie Anderson, you have Crowder in the slot, you have a nice dual tight end threat with both Herndon and Ryan Griffin. Save Le'Veon Bell and let's get after it in 2020 and try to have a productive offense. CeeDee Lamb, flashy pick. I'm going with wide receiver in the first round. I know that's against everything I believe in, but that's what I'm doing. In the second round, 48th overall pick, I am going with Josh Jones, an offensive tackle out of Houston. I flip-flopped it. Usually I would say go with wide receiver in the second round and take offensive lineman in the first, but I flip-flopped him. He is ranked as the 50th overall prospect by the Draft Network. Some say that he is a first-round talent, so if he's there, I mean, that's in good shape. And he could probably start for you on day one. I would bring back Kelvin Beachum, have him start on the left side on a pretty reasonable cap number on a 1 or a 2 year deal. I think that's fine. You can get by with that. And then on the right side, you plug in Jones, and you're already looking a little bit more formidable. In round number 3, the Jets have 2 picks. Thank you, Dave Gettleman. With the first, I go with an edge rusher, Zach Baun out of Wisconsin, and I was licking my chops when he was available in the 3rd round. This is someone I saw a mock draft today from NFL.com where he was in the 1st round. I think ideally he's probably going in the 2nd round, but if he is there for the taking in the 3rd round, you take this swing on the edge rusher. He had 12 and a half sacks last year. The Jets don't have someone who can get after the quarterback, and I think probably in year 1, maybe even year 2, he's more of just a situational pass rusher kind of guy. But this is someone who can develop, and hopefully it's a higher ceiling pick than Jachai Polite, which I really liked that pick last year from the Jets in the 3rd round. He obviously got cut before the end of the preseason and is out of the league, which is crazy. But he had first round talent. So does this guy. I would go with the pick in the 3rd round. Go with the edge rusher. With the second pick in the 3rd round, I am going running back Cam Akers. Now, currently Le'Veon Bell is the only Jets running back on the roster that actually matters. I'm not talking about Trenton Cannon. Bilal Powell, who I love to death, is a million years old and a free agent. Ty Montgomery is a free agent who I like a lot, but they didn't use him at all this year. Are they going to bring him back? I'd lean towards probably not. So draft Cam Akers, who I think in the 3rd round, that's pretty good value. His NFL player comparison is Mark Ingram. He is someone who has a stronger running style. He can catch out of the backfield. We'll see what he could do in pass protection, but at the end of the day, I think what my plan would be, bring back Bell for this year, potentially finish out his contract depending on how this year goes, and then eventually Cam Akers takes over that RB1 role. But those two going back and forth, that's a really nice running back duo, and as you guys know, I've talked about it a million times, whether it's on here or on social media. Please, for the love of God, don't take running backs in the 1st round. You can find really good value in round 3, 4, 5. This is a fine example of that. In round number 4, I'm going back to the offensive line route. Offensive tackle Jake Driscoll out of Auburn. He is a depth piece. Do I expect him to come in and start right away in the 4th round? Absolutely not. But can he provide depth? Sure, he could also play guard, so maybe he's better suited at guard at this level. That's fine. The Jets are weak at that position too. I am trying to load up on as much offensive line talent as possible, and I think doubling down and even tripling down, I'm going to talk about that on that position, is definitely a need. Biggest need going into the draft, offensive line. take more than one offensive lineman. Which leads me to my 5th round selection. Hello, center/guard Jake Hansen out of Oregon. I think he could potentially push Jonathan Harrison to be a starting center. I really like this kid a lot out of Oregon. I think like I said, I think eventually he could be a starter, maybe a backup in year 1, but I think this is potentially a long-term fix. No, I don't have Biadasz available. He wasn't available in the 2nd round when I would have went to take him. But at the end of the day here, maybe you can get some good value here in the 5th round. Is it risky to plug in a 5th rounder to start right away? Yeah, that's probably why you have Jonathan Harrison around, but I think you could push more so than what Ryan Khalil did this year. In the 6th round, I am going corner Troy Pride Jr. out of Notre Dame. He's a really interesting prospect, and when you look at what the New York Jets have done at the cornerback position in recent years, you brought in Tremaine Johnson for big money. That was a big-time flop. You brought in Darryl Roberts, or you paid Darryl Roberts, a big-time contract. He seemed to fail. Your best corners were Arthur Mollett, who you found on the scrap heap, and Bless Austin, who was a 6th rounder from last year, who played like 5 games since the start of the 2017 season. It was crazy. But those 2 guys, realistically, more so Bless Austin, were really solid under Greg Williams. But I don't think you could necessarily rely on them to be starting outside corners without adding depth, that is. And I think this would be a nice depth move. Do I expect him to come in and start right away? No. Can he be a 4th corner, though? Potentially, and I think that would be pretty valuable, and he'd be an upgrade most likely over Tremaine Johnson, who you're cutting, and Darryl Roberts, who you would also cut. So I'm all for going corner. If you're going to go defense, just go corner or edge. Those are the only 2 positions I want to see drafted on the defensive side of the ball. And then in the 7th round, I'm going back to wide receiver. Again, let's make life easy for Sam. J.D. Spielman from Nebraska had 900 receiving yards, roughly 5 touchdowns. He's an interesting player, good route runner, but has case of the drop sometimes. Listen, 7th round players, you're not going to get someone who is a pure prospect. You're not finding a pure prospect in the later rounds, but you are taking a swing on somebody who has some upside, and that rounds out my draft order. So just to recap, I got CeeDee Lamb in the 1st, wide receiver. Then I go Josh Jones in the 2nd. I flip-flop. Usually my ideology is going offensive line in the 1st, wide receiver or skill position in the 2nd. Going to edge in the 3rd round and also running back, loading up on positions of need. Then go to offensive tackle for Jake Driscoll out of Auburn for some depth. Jake Hansen, who I think could potentially be a starter in this league at center or guard from Oregon in the 5th round. Troy Pride Jr. in the 6th, cornerback out of Notre Dame, and then to round out the draft class, J.D. Spielman, wide receiver out of Nebraska. Let me know what you thought about my mock draft in the comments below. I urge you to do this as well. It was a lot of fun. This is mock draft 1.0. There's going to be multiple mock drafts. There's going to be ones with trades. There's going to be ones with drafting different players as it gets closer and closer, and as more mocks continue to come out, I'll provide you some more mock drafts, but this is version 1.0 for the offseason. Thank you so much for tuning in. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Jets content all throughout the year. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you next time.